Hey everybody out there, my name is Dragnix, and this is a dev letter for Overfall. A dev letter is a series where I take a look at an early access game, give you my first impressions of it, but also give feedback to the developers of what they need to add and what they need to focus on. So it's not a formal review, but it is my impressions of it at the time of purchase. The game will release for the price of $9.99 when it comes out on early access on March 1st, 2016 for Steam. It's a tactical hex-based strategy game, but it's more than that. There's exploration elements, there's diplomacy elements, and there's a lot of classes and storytelling to sort of take in here. There's a lot of similarities to Renowned Explorers International Society, but that's a huge bar to be set against because Renowned Explorers was one of my favorite games of last year. But before I begin, I want to make sure you guys know that this dev letter was done with a key obtained from evolve.pr. That won't affect my opinions in the end, but you should know that because of FTC guidelines, as well as the whole morals thing, you know? So the premise of the game starts off with you as the two heroes coming through a time rift. Now you've come to a world that's engulfed in civil war. You've got goblins battling with orcs, you've got Forsaken battling with elves, everyone's trying to kill each other basically. And that's because the Everking, the person who's apparently running this entire place, has gone missing. In order to find your king, you'll have to light up 2 beacons. Now, there is a beacon within the territory of each of the races, the Forsaken, the Elves, so on and so forth. But they won't just give you that information. You'll have to earn it by doing quests, helping them out, and maybe attacking their neighbors in certain cases. Now, similar to games like Renowned Explorers International Society, you don't just beat the crap out of people in order to get to your goals. Sometimes you can bribe a goblin, give them a little bit of dust in order to get your information in question. Sometimes your hero's specific traits may come into play, like my cleric may be able to commune with the spirits in order to find the information I need to move on in the quest. Or you may have to battle things. Of course you need to battle things at times. So for example, these pirates had kidnapped this dancer from a local inn. Now, I try a peaceful solution and find that the pirates are saying that she was forced to dance by the innkeeper in question. But considering that he just made a comment about, her dancing for them over and over again, I was like, no, they must be lying to me. And thus, it's time to beat the crap out of them. Thus, we start combat. Now, combat is divided into 3 phases. The first phase is the movement phase, where I can move my character to anywhere on the screen that is highlighted. The second phase is the utility phase. Within the utility phase, you put buffs on your character or debuff other characters on the enemy team. So for example, I could disarm and immobilize this character if they were within my range. Sadly, they're not, so I actually buff my character with Unbreakable, giving him the Vigor status, which will keep him immune from certain status effects. The final phase is the battle phase, which you can do one of 3 attacks for each hero: chop, cleave, and execute for the warrior's case here. Now in this case I have to skip this phase because the warrior is a close ranged combat unit, and of course they're not right next to me, therefore I can't do damage. Once you're done with your 3 phases, you move on to the next character at the top of the screen, as that's the order the characters go in: Pablo, Luca, Striker, and then the other Striker, then circling back around. Now, what's weird about the game is that it doesn't necessarily give you the win condition for combat. Okay, kill all enemies on the screen, right? In some cases, that's the case, but in some cases, you need to take out a specific enemy, or maybe just one enemy to put the fear of God in them and they run away. It's a little strange because you're always sort of wondering exactly what you need to do, and in some cases, it's obvious that you do need to do something specific because you're going to be overwhelmed with forces. Combat on the surface may seem simplistic, but it's anything but. Yeah, you've got 2 movement skills, you got 3 utility skills, and 3 attack skills for each character you control. But they all have special effects. For example, I feared this pirate. Now, why would I want to fear him? Well, because I don't want to take damage from him. And so, what happens, the fear forces him to run across the map outside of his attack range. Using your skills wisely is vastly important here, because they have cooldowns, and each character has their own purpose on the battlefield. At the start of the game, you'll select 2 heroes out of 9. You'll only have the warrior and the cleric on your first run unlocked, but as you play through the game, you'll get more heroes that you'll be able to select at the start of each run. Now beyond that, there's about 30 plus side heroes that range from a berserker, an ice wizard, a hunter, a pyromancer, with all different skill sets and all specializations, so you can really customize your team. But in particular with the starting 9, you can customize their utility slots. So for example, if I don't find that vulnerable is working for me very well, I can replace it with something else as long as I unlock it. There is a shit ton to unlock in this game from what I see, with a lot of different skills, and they're all very specifically quest-based. So as you find these heroes in the world, you'll be able to unlock them. As you are able to purchase the skills, you'll unlock them permanently at that point. So now that I've explained combat a little bit, maybe I should go into exactly what I think of the combat. It's good. It's not great. It's nowhere near the complexity and the balance that Renowned Explorers has, but it does do a good job. The game's biggest strengths and weaknesses in combat come from the utility system. So for example, when one character can put a bleed via utility system on a character, and then the next one can use their combat system to be able to do more damage thanks to that bleed, this is where the game shines, when you're using characters in synergy with each other to get a bigger benefit and be able to take down characters rather easy. But that's if the buffs or debuffs stay on the characters in question. See, a lot of characters have the ability to get rid of debuffs rather easily, and several characters have the ability to get rid of buffs off of enemy characters rather easily as well. And that's where the game starts to fall apart for me. It just becomes this tug-of-war of statuses back and forth, and you're trying to focus on damage, but those statuses mean something in this game. It just feels like it extends combat to a point where it's sometimes just frustrating. You want this battle to be over. You've got a 2-to-1 advantage on the characters in question. You should be able to rush them down, but you can't. And scratch that, because rushing down a character is never a good option because of the health system. As you get damaged in battle, your health will carry over to the next battle in question. Now, healing your characters is an option with food, which is a resource you can obtain from the islands in question, but it takes a lot of food in order to get back to full health at times. Quick side note here, I completed it and oh, apparently she left on her own accord. I do gain some skills and I gained some food, but I didn't exactly get the best benefit out of the choices that I made there. Now, those outcomes seem to be random at times or pre-scripted with others. So, for example, this could have gone completely different depending on the options I chose or just, sheer luck. Now, circling back to the health system, I can replenish some of Pablo's health here with some food. Food is a scarcer resource. It doesn't necessarily, avoid you, but it does cost a lot. It costs a bunch of frags, aka the gold in this game, to get one piece of food. So it's not necessarily something you can just throw at your heroes. This is also complicated by the ineffectiveness of the in-game healing skills for characters like the cleric. See, those heal skills are a buff that can be taken off rather easily, so you may not be able to gain some health, and even when you do, it's something like 2 health. It's not necessarily the greatest of buffs. Now, it's possible I just haven't unlocked a character that has an instant heal of sorts, but it is a little bit annoying, especially early on. Now, the developers of Overfall think that one of the major strengths of the game is the stories you encounter during a playthrough. They've even given you a story creator so that you can create your own stories within the game. These stories all follow a basic structure, which a lot of the quests within these games do, but it's a little bit more prevalent with the custom story creator here. It's a game writing style guide. It explains the basics of creating a story within Overfall, giving some ideas of how to write a good story, and outlines Overfall's writing style with a couple of examples that they give you right here. Now, it's nice that they give you this tool, but I want to go back to the actual story elements here first, because you need a solid foundation in order to be able to really effectively use this, and I want to talk about that first. See, Para Games has indicated that they worked with Chris Avellone. Now, you may not know that name. He's a writer who was involved in things like Fallout 2, Fallout New Vegas, FTL, Baldur's Gate, a lot of great writing projects that have come out of this one dude, so you would expect the same kind of quality out of the stories here. That's where things get a little bit strange. See, the writing quality and the type of quests that you go on are all over the place. So for example, you'll get a socially conscious quest where you have a goblin and a dwarf, where the dwarf is a slave to the goblin, but you find out that's not the case. They're actually in a relationship, but society won't accept them. Okay, cool, social commentary, I like what they did there. But then you immediately go to a humorous story where it is a Warcraft orc becoming a peon. Basically, all he can do is be a Warcraft 3 orc that is, building something and making the sounds that he makes. In both of those specific cases, they work well self-contained. Both of them are fun to listen to, and they have a writing quality to them. But it's when it comes into the overworld, where you're supposed to have this sort of connected narrative, where everything falls apart. There's this huge disconnect from the quest that you're doing to the overall main storyline in question. You're going to try to find this king. You're trying to, earn the trust of people, but it's never really brought up. It's almost like you forget about it once you get going in terms of questing. Even when you have your reputation go up via a quest, it doesn't have the writing impact at times to say, yeah, this connects to the overall narrative. It's just a value on screen saying +1 the Forsaken reputation without them saying something along the lines of, thanks, I'll tell my other people that you are a friendly person. They do that once in a while, but they don't do it with every quest. And in order for it to connect to your main quest, you need to emphasize that. It's great that you have a tool that people can create content with already, but I would have liked to seen a cohesive storyline that really played out well before you gave the tool out at this point. I know that is a weird and backwards logic to some people, but in order to sort of inspire people to create these wonderful, thread-woven stories where everything connects to each other, you need to set the example. And while you set an example of a good single quest here, you didn't do it for the overall picture, and that's where I have the problem. Switching gears here, the UI is minimalistic, and it does a good job of not being in the way, but getting you the information you need to a certain extent. Now, in terms of characters, I did want a little bit of a character screen to be able to bring up the information on a larger basis. Yeah, I can hover on the tab at the top of the screen there, but the information is so small at times, and trying to highlight over a specific area, it just was a little bit more problematic than it needed to be. Also, hover tooltips for the statuses for the words on the bottom of the screen there. So yeah, I know what bleeding and poison will probably do. It'll probably do damage over time. But the status of vigor, I won't necessarily know what that is, and trying to decide that over putting fear on an enemy, that can be a little bit worrisome in terms of, okay, what exactly does it do? What does that specific status do again? You have so many statuses here, you really need to give that information up front. But switching gears back to the consumer side of things, for those who are looking at Overfall and are thinking about making a purchase, I think the quality of the content here is good. There is some rough spots. The UI has some issues. There are bugs that pop up once in a while. This is an early access game. But you do get a lot of content here in terms of heroes, a lot of unlockables, and a lot of strategy from the combat side of things. I do think it needs tightening up, but you may want to get in early rather than later. From what I'm understanding from the Steam store page, the price of the game will be $10 now. When it launches, it may be $15 or $20. 20 in particular would be a hard, sell, considering the fact that, hey, you can get it for 10 now, and you got a lot of quality here. The aesthetic here is nice. There is a wide variety of different islands. Yeah, they do a lot of copy and pasting in terms of the overall world map, but I can understand that considering that the quests in question are supposed to be all of one type. You sort of want that connection there. Sound-wise, the design is good, but there are a lot of missing sounds, like in particular fireballs that are fired at someone and it not having any sound whatsoever. Again, I understand this is early access, but I need to point it out. But the best compliment I can give this game is its addictiveness. Yes, I wanted to start a run over and try it, over and over again with different characters. I did want to unlock all the characters. I did play about 7 hours of the early access title before I made these first impressions, aka dev letter, and that should say something. Is it of the quality of something like Darkest Dungeon when it first came out in early access? No. But the game does have a lot to offer, and I would take a strong look at it and even consider a purchase if you're a roguelike strategy fan in question. Alright, this is Dragnix signing out. I hope you got an idea of what Overfall has to offer in its current early access state. Again, this game comes out tomorrow compared to when this video comes out because of embargo for the reviews in question, although technically it's not a review because, well, it's in early access. The next review that will hit the channel will not be Danganronpa, despite me saying earlier that it would be. I apologize, however, I did get a review copy of The Witch and the 100 Night Revival Edition from NIS, and so I want to put my attention to that. I got the review copy on Thursday, the embargo lifted on Friday, which is a little bit strange considering the whole Japanese RPG thing. It doesn't necessarily take 8 hours to beat the game. But the game officially releases on Tuesday, and I'm hoping to have it done by then, fingers crossed. I'm hoping to beat it tonight. I have 20 plus hours in it, but I still think I have 4 chapters to go. So it may be Wednesday, it may be Thursday. I also have Bazir later in the week, and then of course I will try to catch up with everything else that I've got on my plate. Anyway, have a good rest of your day, and keep on gaming. Hey everybody, thanks for watching. If you found this video useful, hit that like button, maybe share it with a friend. I write an appropriate Steam review that you can find in the description below for games on Steam, and I'll respond to any comments below regarding questions about the game and feedback about the video. If you want to see more content like this, hit that subscribe button, and you can check out my last video in the top left and a related video in the top right. You want to keep this channel running as well? Then consider supporting my work on Patreon, which you can find in the description below, along with my Google Plus page, Facebook group, and Twitter handle. This is Dragnix signing out, and keep on gaming.